Hello everybody, and welcome to This Nintendo Life episode 329. My name is NBZ, and I have returned, even though I'm about to leave again. It's travel season, Bally. I'm on planes, I'm flying through the sky, I'm going across the world, jet-setting. As soon as I have returned to the podcast, I'm literally going to Germany for Gamescom next week, so... it's the event circuit. This is what happens. You go to different places, meet different developers, all that fun stuff, and I'm in the eye of the storm. I really, I enjoy it from time to time, but I think like doing it back to back is just a bit too much. There's others in the company who do it much more than I do, and I'm like,
really?
How do you do that? Because it's
wow.
Well, yeah, my colleague Patrick he's obviously based in Japan now, and he is doing all the Japanese events, but also stuff around Asia. So like Thailand or Singapore or Korea or whatever, and he's like events all the time, I think he's got more of a stomach for it than I do.
Wow.
I'm okay at it.
Is he in China as well?
He was in China as well, yes.
Nice.
Just jet setting around the place constantly, which is, there's some people who all they do is go to events, which is not quite the case with us, but there's some good stuff to be gained from going to those places and talking with partners and things like that, but also trying to find other video games out there in the world, as I want to do. So, I'll be off back to some sausage eating. I guess I'm going to have another travel audio thing, so I'm probably going to have to edit a bunch of those and get those sorted. But, all good, and looking forward to... some of the German food, and you can hear about some Chinese food and probably some German food on those audio logs when they go live, which I need to get around to editing. The China one, it's a little intimidating with how many clips I have, I think, so I need to figure out a way to do that. But in any case, hello. This is a podcast about video games, about Nintendo specifically. I'm joined by Bally. Hello, Bally.
I'm Zed.
You're back.
Yes, I never left. I'm here.
You never left. You held down the fort, in fact. Yeah,
I held down the fort, and shout outs to Matt Lorigan for coming on the show with me last time. That was a good time. I say this every time I'm put in the host seat, and we said, but like, well done on all your hosting, because it is a tricky thing to do when you're in the hot seat, especially with a guest.
I think
just kind of keeping everything flowing.
When it's just me and you, I do think that hosting is a lot easier. When you have someone else or if you have like multiple other people, that's like, if you have a podcast of 4 people, that's when hosting is difficult, because that's when you have to keep things on track and like moving and flowing and stuff like that. Versus me and you, where, to be honest, I don't know if I really do much in hosting this. I just talk a lot, and then you talk a bit, and it goes okay. So but no, I appreciate that.
Did you have any qualms with our list of Nintendo innovations? There were no short hike gate occurring in this list.
It was terrible. No, the only thing I would say, I think I said to you, just like the Game Boy versus just handhelds in general, that was the only qualm I had there. But I think you did a good job, and especially for keeping 3D on the list, as we all know, that was the most important feature Nintendo has ever made. Should have been number 1, to be honest with you, but some people...
3DS 3D versus Labo 3D, maybe VR, I should say.
Yeah.
Well, one's VR, one's 3D, but they're similar technology, but different outcomes, I guess. I don't know. Exactly.
So, Nintendo like 3D. That's their favorite thing in the world. There are some 3D Nintendo video games, some of which I've been playing. Bally, do you want to tell the fine folks at home what today's show is going to encompass?
For the first segment, we're going to talk about the games that we have been playing, and for the second segment, we're going to do some listener emails. We're back to the vanilla show, the way I like it.
Bally's favorite flavor of all time.
My favorite.
Oh dear. Great. So, while I was in China, in fact, the flight day that I left, the 23rd of July, was the release day of Splatoon Raiders, which came out. It's actually the 23rd of August today, so it's literally a month ago that happened. I downloaded, actually preloaded it the day before, downloaded it for my flight, and I basically played the whole thing across that trip. So I've never played it on a TV, I'm pretty sure. I've just played it handheld the whole time. And you obviously talked about Splatoon Raiders last time on the show, and you'd finished it as well. But I fully kind of completed the campaign. I did a little bit of extra like post-game stuff as well, and I haven't dug too deep into it, but I would like to go back and play some more, because I did really enjoy it. But Splatoon Raiders is a really interesting game. I think it has a lot of elements about it that before it came out, I don't think either of us really knew what the game was, right? I think Nintendo struggled to communicate or convey what Splatoon Raiders actually was. In some parts, it reminded me of the roguelike DLC that they had done for Splatoon 3. In other elements, it was quite Salmon Run-esque. And it turns out it's kind of a bit of all of those, but also it's very upgrade and loot focused. And generally just full combat. Like, there's definitely those stages you do, which are the ones where you are traversing a space and you're going forward, and you are sometimes, using your little drone bot to jump places, or you're trying to find secrets, but...
We're mowing down the locals to get the treasure. That's what the game's all about, right?
Yeah, exactly. As you said, it's a colonial expansionism of the Inklings, Squidlings, whatever you want to call them, going out there into the world in these kind of spiraling islands. But yeah, I was kind of going to say that it's so combat focused, generally speaking, aside from like those little dalliances where you are navigating some terrain and going through spaces. And I wasn't sure how I would respond to that, mainly because like I like Salmon Run, I think it's okay, but I tended to get frustrated with it sometimes, and some of the like parts of it where it got mad in terms of the number of enemies and all that sort of stuff, I found frustrating to some degree. I've always enjoyed the kind of core multiplayer of Splatoon, I think because of the direct, like, one-to-one nature of it, and the kind of splattering the ground with ink, which I feel like that is important in this game, but it feels much more like a no-kill things type of game. This is far more of a shooter than Splatoon has ever been before, because obviously the core kind of element that the game was founded on, the original, was take over territory, right? It's turf war is what you're supposed to do, and you're supposed to splash your area, and therefore the person who has the most ink on their area wins. And obviously splashing your area benefits you because it means you can swim through the ink and all that sort of stuff, and that still remains true in Splatoon Raiders, but I think this is way more of a combat focused game and a killing enemies focused game than traditionally Splatoon kind of at least says it's about. And I really, really like this game. I found it super compelling. I feel like there is a lot of elements that they bring in that makes it so satisfying. In many ways, like every single match that you do, every single like little thing you go out on, every time you come back, there's something for you to tinker with or upgrade or change, whether it be new weapons that you get, or like upgrade points to invest in your strength or your health or whatever, or a different gadget that you can then unlock with currency. Like, there are so many little systems they have to make it so that you never feel like you're kind of banging your head against the wall. Like, even in the matches or like the kind of like arenas that I found myself failing over and over again, there was always something I could change or tweak or have a look at to kind of change my approach towards it. The one that I got stuck on the most was this. I can't remember if I don't know if you did it or not, but the enemies which are like 8 different little guys spinning around a like a pillar type thing, and then you have to shoot them and the pillar explodes, but then the ball stays at the top until it crumbles down. The hardest one for me was one where it is just those guys.
Yeah, that was a tricky one.
It's really, really tough because it's like, how do you get them and manage to like take them out easily, but then also be able to collect all of the eggs, because collecting the eggs is a whole palaver with it like staying in the sky with those pillars and everything. And so loads of different things I tried, kept going back and forth, and like finding a combination of gadgets where one of the gadgets is a big tornado thing you put out, and any time it touches an egg, it will auto collect the egg. So finding that as its use and throwing that out there, being able to like collect these eggs without me having to go and get them myself, and then using the kind of like blast weapon that explodes at a distance to kind of eliminate multiple of those at once, the little fish in the sky. Like a combination of that and, just changing things up. It did still take me a few tries, but I eventually was able to do it. And it just feels very satisfying when you kind of puzzle your way out of a specific solution in terms of those setups that they give you.
I found that level you're talking about, and there was one other one where it's almost like on a slope, and then there's loads of enemies, and then they just keep coming at you. And I found because of the slope, the bucket was very good at the slope because you can actually attack enemies behind the one in front of you. Other than those 2 levels, I didn't actually find the game overly puzzling. It was more just like, okay,
No.
how do I just maximize my equipment to have the most powerful setup, really? And I would
Right.
stick with that for like 90% of my runs. Like, what was your favorite setup?
Yeah, I think because the game is so built around the level of your weapon and how strong it is, I think I tended to jump between a few different ones, and I mean, by the end, I did have the one that I was using the most. I think I had a similar to the one I was just talking about, like the blast gun, but I had that like upgraded a few levels, like +5 or something on one of those. But it was a golden one. It was like a legendary, right? Because you can get the different star ratings on those. But like I used a sniper rifle for a while. I was using the not the paint roller, the paintbrush for a while. And the regular splatter shots, a few of those, and lots of different ones.
I was generally going for the highest level thing for the most part, and mixing
right. Going for the highest level thing was cool because it kind of I like it because the game forces you to change up your weapon, right? And otherwise, I would have just like kept the same splatter shot and just upgraded it constantly. But it got to the point where I was like, well,
what about gadgets though?
Yeah, so gadgets are interesting. I found myself, surprise, the speed tank was my favorite because that's the kind of player.
Oh, you like the speed stuff? Interesting.
Yes. You
weren't a turtle turret fan like me.
No. Well, so I did. So eventually, the turret I think is probably the best gadget in the game. But once you have obviously leveled up your gadgets enough, you can get an extra slot. And so the third gadget slot I used for the turret. So I had the turret on my speed tank as well. So I would use, I basically used the jump one, which is like you jump, is the first one you have in the game, where you basically jump a distance and splat down on the ground, just because it's a really good get out of dodge ability of like, fuck, I'm pressed, they're all around me, I need some space to breathe, and that is a really good tool for giving you space to breathe, but also potentially exploding stuff around you. And so that one I definitely relied on. And then the other one was the boomerang that you get with the speed tank, which you just throw out in front of you, and it kind of like stays in place for a bit. So between that and the turret, I had a pretty good damage setup, but also the ability to like get out of the way if I needed to.
The Winston strategy.
But I think, again, to this game's credit, the fact that you have those islands that have 3 different treasure chests, and each of them is a different tank, and if you don't have that tank being used, then you don't get the reward from it. And it felt like, in terms of like the ramp up of levels, it was beneficial to me to do all 3 of those every time, so that I could keep pace with what the game was requiring of me in terms of what level I was supposed to be. So I was always like, every time I got to those, I would do all 3 of them back to back, and it meant that I did get a decent variety of all the different tanks. I think I maxed out all 3 by the end of the game, so I was pretty kind of like varied. I think speed was the one I just used the most, generally speaking. If you look at like number of eggs collected with speed, it would be double the other 2, but I still maxed out the other 2. And I think, you know, the game almost kind of wants you to, like, it gives you enough resources to where it's not too difficult to do that by the time you get to the end of the game. But yeah, I think that's the kind of thing I'm getting at here, is like, I do appreciate that this game forces the player to change up their play style and their tactics frequently. Not, you know, as much, I would say, like,
partially,
arguably with the like the level setup stuff. Like the level I talked about, I agree with you, is like the rarity, because for the most part it was about like damage output and being able to like deal with enemies as quickly as you possibly could, and that tends to come down to like power of your weapon, right, and your DPS output a lot of the time, and like, it was quite good to practice on the little dolls they had outside in the kind of hub area, because I could see how much damage each of my weapons was doing on those, and that was a good kind of like indicator of like, am I ready to take on this higher level thing or not. But yeah, the gadgets and the weapons and like the level gating, forcing you to switch both of those up, I thought was really fun. Cool. And I don't know, I think something that I really found with Splatoon Raiders, and it's a thing that we think about a lot with Nintendo games, but it really was brought into stark relief with this game, is I would just be enjoying myself just going around the hub area and shooting at the dolls, because of how good Splatoon feels, right? And I think it's a very simple, basic thing, but there's something about the fluidity and the sound design, all of it coming together. Nintendo just like, obviously they have that ability to make things just feel supremely great, just on a fundamental level, you know. But it just, I don't know, it just really stood out to me while playing Splatoon Raiders. Like, this just feels, I would just do this for fun, just like running, just moving around and just shooting my gun for the satisfaction of it, let alone just doing it, and the fucking sound effects of the orbs and the eggs coming into you and everything. Like, there's a real dopamine kind of distillation that they found with every like kind of sound and visual element of Splatoon,
and like the collecting of the eggs and like all that sound and the bars going up. It's all incredible. Did you hear Blessing on Kind of Funny where he's essentially admitting that he'd kind of missed the concept of Splatoon over the last like 3 games, and he's like, when you think about it, like shooting the gun, making a mess on the ground, and then using the mess for traversal, you're at the ink. It's like, he's like, that's really clever, and I couldn't agree more. Like, and I think that there is always an argument for getting your ink down to help your traversal, to get out of dodge, as you say. If you don't have that like Winston ability you're talking about, like jumping backwards, you need to make sure that there's your color ink behind you to like swim out of the way. And if you get surrounded, like you really need to power your way through enemies. Like, and I think that Raiders is just such an impressive addition and complement to an already existing incredibly smooth gameplay mechanic. And it's, as you say, it's not just the mechanic, it's the sound design, it's the game feel, it's just a really intuitive, good feeling thing to do. And I think Raiders is a great, you know, feather in the bow, as a feather in the hat, I can't remember the phrase, feather in the hat of like an already incredible Nintendo franchise, but here's like the single player kind of roguish loot based game, as it were. Like, and I think that it's so good for the series that this exists, and I don't know if it's going to like entice people into the other series, and it is very different. It's even very different to like the Splatoon single player, where there's a lot more puzzling. There's other more innovative ways, I'd argue, of defeating some of those enemies, whereas this game is a lot more about sheer power. And yes, there are a couple of puzzly areas in the ways you defeat enemies, but ultimately I think this is a really great game to add to like the Splatoon world.
For sure. I think the thing about it that really struck me was when you're playing Salmon Run or regular Splatoon, you feel weak, I would argue, right? I think a lot of the times in Splatoon, you feel...
Yes. You don't have the gadgets. I think that's the big difference, right?
Well, there's some of that, but I think even just like in the escalation of damage that your guns can do, and like especially when you're going back to previous levels, and you're like, so I was like level 36 or whatever, and I was like, oh, let me just do some of the spicy levels at like level 25 or whatever, and I would go back to those levels, and I would fucking eviscerate the salmonids, you know? I was like tearing through them, and there is this real beautiful sense of like power that you get from that, where... yeah, in the other games you never really experience it because it's like such a tactical one-on-one thing, or like just a small team setup when you're playing Turf War, or in Salmon Run, like it's overwhelming odds against you, and you are, you know, you're gonna fail eventually, right? That's kind of how it's built. It's like that sense of like escalation against you. And I think Raiders is really the first time where you have been able to like build this power and go back into the game and just like blast your way through, because it's built on numbers, right? It's built on like, okay, these enemies are going to have this much health and you're going to do this much damage, and because we have to like escalate that and do that over time. So like going back to some of those levels and replaying them to get more resources, I was like, this just feels great to run through here and absolutely dominate everything, and just feel like the satisfaction of the level curve where I have outdone this entire stage and I'm killing, like, there are enemies that take so many hits at a higher level, but here I kill them in like 3 shots and they're dead, and it just feels fantastic. And so there's that element of it, but also like I was willing to replay stages, which like I never do that in games, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One of that is how short everything is. Aside from the kind of open stages where you're going around collecting, you know, a certain number of spiralite to then go back to the...
and those open ones, I'd argue, are... So you got the 3 types of stages broadly. You got the most open ones where it's almost point to point to point, and you can genuinely open. You can go in any order you want, and then you've got the more linear open stages, as it were. And then you have the almost kind of like timed battle rooms. The timed battle rooms are easily consistently the hardest of the three. Like, I was dying a lot more in them versus the other ones.
Yes.
Like, I like that. I found those the most satisfying, basically. Like the smaller types.
They're also the shortest as well, right?
And they
so
were the
like,
shortest.
It's quite easy to knock out. So yeah, I think those. I think just the speed of everything, how quickly you can get through a stage. It just lends it to being like, oh no, I'll replay that on spicy. I'll do that on a harder difficulty, because you get more resources for doing so. And if you want to upgrade things, then having those resources is going to be really valuable. I think you could argue in a lot of ways that it underwhelms from certain elements. Like, I know people were disappointed with the fashion stuff, and they're disappointed with the music, and disappointed with like
the final boss music is very good.
Right. But like the look of the levels and how like they're kind of drab, and they don't necessarily have like that kind of like bright kind of aesthetic.
Did you see the interview with the developers that Matt posted?
Yes. Yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
So basically, they were all going to. It actually plays into my colonialism theory, where they were going to live on like much more resort-style islands, but the fear was that by the Salmonids living in a more resorty style life, they would look far too. Human's the wrong word, but they'd be far. You'd feel more guilty mowing them down, essentially, if you were destroying their kind of built up lives, whereas as it is, they are a lot more, I guess, zombie like, sort of coming out of the sea, and as a result they got rid of a lot of the infrastructure in terms of like the buildings, in terms of the resort style, and I think that just made a lot of the levels look a lot more plain than they otherwise were going to look, basically.
Right, yeah. And I see all those criticisms, but I think ultimately none of them really hurt the game for me. I think the focus is so much on that kind of core loop of, you know, fighting enemies and collecting stuff and improving your character and going back out and kind of doing it again and again, that, yeah, I can see that, but it doesn't, personally, it just wasn't a big deal. And also, as we know, I'm a podcast gamer. This game's a fucking great podcast game. So I don't really need the music that much. It's nice to have a little bit in the background, but like, I was listening to podcasts while playing this in my hotel room a lot of the time, and that was great for me. Like, I really enjoyed that flow and the way it all felt. So, I think like just also like the variety of enemies they have in the game, and like the way in which you know what an enemy does, and you have the ones that you fucking hate, and you know, and there's quite a few of those, I'm going to say, in Splatoon Raiders. There's a lot of enemies where I'm like, oh, not this fucking guy again. But it's like, there's always a way to get around them and a way to deal with them. And there's certain ones where you want to deal with them, like the guys in the towers, right, who shoot the fucking laser beams at you. Always go for those guys first, take them down. Same with the big boys who like the exploding head ones, where
they've got a chargeable projectile and you have to hit it as it's charging.
It's charging, and trying like exploding those guys while they're next to another one to then explode them is always really satisfying. So there's like a really good roster of enemies here that forces you into like decision making of like, where do I go to deal with this threat first to make things my life the most easy, basically. So there's always like quick tactical decisions you are making on the fly of like, okay, what order am I deleting all these enemies in order to give myself the best chance of success? And I think they have a really good variety.
And some of those tougher levels near the end will put the toughest bosses together, and then they'll do like extra hard versions of those bosses, and they'll have bigger life bars, and then you have to decide, right, which one am I going for first? And it's hardest at the start when there's 3, and it actually becomes a lot easier when it goes down to 2 and then 1 and you defeat them all. But like, it's really well done. What did you think of the difficulty curve near the end of the game, and including the final boss? What did you think of the bosses generally in the game? And when I say bosses, like, there's a handful of set piece bosses. I'd argue those bosses have kind of the most Nintendo juice in the game, where really innovative designs, unique ways of defeating them, and felt like set piece moments.
Yeah, I like all of those. I definitely think the bosses are, like you said, they feel more set piece than challenge, in the sense that I never was dying on the bosses necessarily, and I think they give you good windows of opportunity to like get your health back or like heal yourself and not die terribly. I think it almost feels like a different game to some degree. Like the final boss, for example, you don't have actually any lives on. I died so many times on that thing, and I realized, oh, I don't have any lives, so it actually doesn't.
They're just doing like a procession at the that's cool.
It's kind of like
Victory lap.
a celebration to some degree. Yeah, victory lap. And it was a fun little challenge, but like, yeah, I didn't feel threatened at all, and at a point I was like, oh, I actually don't really need to try that much here, because I realized I'm not going to restart from the beginning, which I don't know if I would have been frustrated if it hadn't been that way, because there was lots of like annoying platforming actually in that final boss section.
You would have been, if you had died and restarted that boss fight, and it's a fairly long boss fight, you would be pretty cross. So I
probably would be, which we can talk about later with another game, but I think that's something that I appreciate that they put in there, in the sense that like they understand the goal here is let's build up like the music and everything and the spectacle and everything popping, and if you cut that momentum short, it feels bad for a player, you know, and you don't necessarily want to do that, right? Like, no game would ever do that, would they? Final Fantasy VII Remake ever on the final boss of a game that lasts 1 hour and you can die and have to start it from the beginning. So I think that they made a good decision there. And the other bosses I liked. I thought they were good. I've replayed a couple of them on the more spicy mode, and they're definitely more challenging on those, which is nice. So they kind
Are you doing post-game stuff?
So the post-game's interesting because it has like the 3 areas you're supposed to go to, and they're like much higher level. And once you do all 3 of them, you unlock something that lets you go into some other place, which I haven't gotten to. But I've heard people talking about like an endless type of thing you go down, with like lots of different floors.
And there is like a final secret big boss.
Oh, is there? Okay, interesting.
I'm personally done with the game. I think I did like I don't know, 12, 14 hours, and I felt good about that, and I'm happy with that. And I think it becomes a bit more. It always becomes a bit more roguelike, I guess. It's
more grindy, I guess. It's just like it becomes more of a looter shooter in that sense, if you're just chasing the numbers at that point.
Right, and I'm not there for that, but I really enjoyed the main game.
Yeah, I think the thing that's nice about it is like, I think the same thing for Rhythm Heaven and for this, of like, these are games I can go back to whenever I want to and be like, oh, I want to do a few more, stages in Rhythm Heaven and try and get all of those medals.
You're going to get all those Rhythm Heaven medals.
Yeah, and then same for Splatoon, of like, oh, I feel like just play, like I'm saying, it just feels good to play Splatoon. And honestly, if I want to just pick up and play Splatoon without having to be online or whatever, this is the best port of call for that, of like, I just want the sensation of moving in ink and shooting my gun, right? Like, I think it's a really easy pick up and play thing. And yeah, I can see myself definitely from time to time going back and jumping in and just slowly chipping away at that stuff, because it's a nice thing to have on the back burner. So yeah, I think it's really, really good. It's definitely one of my favorite things I played this year, and surprising because I didn't really know what it was going in and was kind of unsure, but it's definitely won me over, and I think there's a lot they can do still to improve it, which is cool, because I think there's ways in which they can up the kind of visual variety and the kind of, I don't know, diversity of things you're doing and levels you're going to and all this sort of stuff, while maintaining like the really strong kind of loot collection loop that they have going on already in the game, and yeah, everything like that. There's different varieties of levels they could add. Also, did you ever figure out the compass stuff in the game? Did you end up doing those levels or not?
I thought you just needed the compasses to unlock the next. You use the compasses to remove the next batch of cloud blocking the next islands, I thought.
No. So I didn't realize it. I was listening to RFN, and Greg Leahy was like, oh yeah, and then you've got the sampler dungeons. And I was like, what the fuck is the sampler dungeons? And he, at that point in time, I was further ahead than him in the game, and I was listening to RFN. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And so I went in, and I realized if you move your analog stick around the map to where the compass is pointing to, you will find a hidden level. And those hidden levels, this is really weird they did it this way, because those hidden levels are effectively tutorials for every gadget in the game. So every gadget in the game has a custom level, yes, where they teach you how to use the gadget, but the only way to find them is to use the compass to find hidden spots in the world map.
Well, maybe knowing the use of the gadget at that more niche level is beneficial to the post-game stuff, perhaps. Like, maybe that's why it would be a bit more hidden?
I don't know. They seemed pretty basic.
Because we never did it, and we still beat the game and didn't find it. It's a challenging game at points, but it's
So
not crazy,
what
right?
happened was, after I heard that episode, I was still playing the game. I went and found them, and so I have done a bunch of them, and they really are tutorials for the gadgets. Like they definitely teach you some stuff about the gadgets that I didn't know, so there are certain ones that I actually wasn't really using, so I didn't actually know what they were supposed to do, but they definitely showed me some interesting uses of what the gadgets could do, but I wouldn't say that they were like, I don't know, pro hardcore like things that I wouldn't have been able to get away with otherwise. But yeah, it's really interesting because those levels feel the most like traditional campaign Splatoon levels, because they're built around not puzzles necessarily, but like specific challenges that you can only complete with a gadget. And sometimes they don't even give you a gun. Sometimes it's just like, here's just the gadget. You'll just be pressing the R button to use the gadget throughout this whole part of the stage. Cool. And yeah, you won't even have a weapon to do it. So yeah, I played through a good chunk of those, and there's also some of those which are just based around the gun itself and like more kind of challenges with the gun, which I thought was very fun. So yeah, it's a shame that those were not more obvious in the game, because
maybe they just thought the game would be a bit bloated if there was like a tutorial for every gadget, because there are so many gadgets, right? Like I think if you do all those levels, that's quite a lot of extra levels, right? So
it's tons. Yeah, I've definitely, and I think like each level has a hidden scroll which has like some lore in it, but then also a compass, and so finding the compasses will then give you the opportunity to find all of these. So I haven't actually found all of them yet, because there's still levels where I don't have the compass in. So yeah, there's a good amount still for me to go out and find out in the world there. But yeah, overall, really fantastic. Definitely one of the better Switch 2 games for me, and yeah, looking forward to seeing what they do in the future. I think Raiders 2 is probably going to happen at some point, I imagine. So yeah, we'll see. One day they'll do the fashion Splatoon game that I've been predicting for years, Bally, but they decided to go in let's say a more hardcore direction this time. Yeah, great. Well, Bally, you have been playing a game that I told you to play this year.
Game Trade.
Which is very exciting. Yeah, Game Trade is coming in.
So for those who are unaware of what Game Trade is, each year for the last 5 years, I think it's been going. MBZ?
6 maybe.
Six maybe. MBZ and myself give each other a game in January, and we say, here's a game I've played and normally have enjoyed and think you should try, and you've not played it, so I would like you to play it. So we strive to play it, and we don't have to finish it, we just have to give it a good old try, and a fair try. And this year you gave me Yakuza 0. I'll talk about that in a second. And this year I have given you Dredge, and I want to stipulate a rule right here, right now, because I think that at the end of last year, you played Cult of the Lamb. In fact, I think it was the last game you played of the year before our Go TT Dakoti discussion.
Yeah, I only had about 3 days of December to play it, so...
And I think you were making my point for me that I think that cramming that game, whether you had issues with it or not, I know you had some issues with that game, I think the way that you crammed it partially, or even maybe a bit more than partially, affected your enjoyment of what is otherwise, in my view, a pretty great indie game. So my request to you this time, MZ, is you must play Dredge before the month of December. So, like, you're going to take the pressure off. Dredge isn't even that long. It's even shorter than Cult of the Lamb. It's like a 12-hour game, if that. You could probably... MBZ, with your skills, you could beat this game in about 8 hours. So, you know, I think it's important, and I'm letting everyone know, all the listeners, holding MBZ to account here. It's important that you beat this game before the start of December. So that's my challenge to you.
I do appreciate that. I will counter with the fact that I also did this with Metroid Prime, and that didn't turn out the way that I expected it to.
Okay, so well, fair enough, yeah.
I definitely think that's a factor. I think also a factor was I was horrendously sick over Christmas, and like...
Here's this goddamn game that Bally's made me play. I've not played it yet, and I'm sick, and I don't even enjoy
really
this.
Sick, and I've got 3 days to do it. And also, to be frank, even if I'd played that in like March... I think Cult of the Lamb's a bad video game. I really do not like it. I really strongly dislike Cult of the Lamb, and I think it is just very much a taste thing, and I don't think any context would have changed it. But I do definitely think there's definitely a visceralness with which I bounced off of it, which I don't think I would have done quite as much had I not been extremely sick, and also the last few days of the year. So,
got you.
Point noted, I will endeavour to play Dredge without doing that. But I am in support of you, Bally, playing Yakuza 0 alongside you, because technically this is a little bit of a cheat, because I actually haven't played the Yakuza 0 myself. And despite being a massive Yakuza fan and having played every other game in the series, the reason I never played 0 is because I watched Giant Bomb play it back in 2017. And if I've watched a Let's Play of a thing, I'm just generally less inclined to play it through because I've seen it and everything, and Yakuza is so story-driven that I was like, but it's been like almost 10 years now since that happened. It came out in 2017, and I don't remember a huge amount about it.
I thought it came out in 2015.
No, 2015, I believe, was Yakuza 5, and then 2017. So, yeah, because Yakuza 0 is in the death year of 2017, where every good video game ever came out, right? And it got overlooked, I think, because of that. But obviously, it was the thing that kind of brought the series hugely to the West and really opened people's eyes up about what Yakuza could be. But yes, like I said, I hadn't played it, and so I decided I was going to play it with Bally alongside him. So I've also been playing it, but I'm only a couple of hours in. I started it today. So yes, giving me some reminders of like what was happening at the start of that game and the story stuff. So some good setup. But Bally, this has been a series that I have evangelized for many years on this podcast. I believe it was 2020 or 2021 where I started playing them, and I think I played like 5 of them in a year. Like I went fucking crazy and just played them back to back. So yeah. If you look at my like games played in 2021, you'll see like Kiwami 2, 3, 4, 5. Like I just did all of them basically back to back, the core series, because I couldn't get enough of it, because I loved it, and I fell in love with Kiwami, the first one, which I played over Christmas, and that game takes place at Christmas as well, so it was like such a, very, very good vibe. Yeah, it's Yakuza takes place at Christmas often. I don't know why that is, but seems to be the thing with the series a little bit. But with that preamble out of the way, Bally, I've been awaiting a time for you to play it, and last year, on the Switch 2, they released Yakuza 0 Director's Cut. And so, you're able to... I was able to include it as part of this thing, because part of the rule of game trade is it has to be available on a Nintendo console. And that has unlocked a few games over the last few years, such as Danganronpa and stuff like that. So, Yakuza 0 is the latest. So, Bally, what do you think? How you feel? Was it a good idea for me to get you to play this game?
I will say, I am 18 hours in. I'm on Chapter 7. The whole reason I'm starting this game in August and not November or October is because if I want to play this game and do a decent amount of side stuff, which I am keen to do, it's looking at 50 to 60 hours, and obviously with my playtime that might even stretch to 70. God knows how long.
I don't think it'll go that far.
Okay, not set, but I'm confident it'll be 50 to 60. We'll see. I knew nothing about this game going in. I didn't even know that the protagonist switches, in the game.
You didn't know about Majima being a second playable protagonist?
Yeah, I didn't even know that you go to Dotonbori in this game. I thought the whole game was Kamurocho. And I think that actually one of the best bits is the fact that you do... So I'm going to be spoiler-free. I think that it might be worth us doing something spoilery once you've finished it as well, and then we can talk about lots of important story beats. But I am really enjoying my time with it so far. I think it's really strong. I think the best bit so far is actually the switching between Kiryu and Majima. And that's on a number of levels, because the game is dastardly at switching between them on story cliffhangers. And I'm so like I said, I'm 18 hours in, Chapter 7. I must have had 3 or 4 cliffhangers already on each story switch. And I feel like it switches every 2 chapters or so. And, we've talked about the way that a game like Final Fantasy VII juxtaposes serious main story with very lighthearted side quests. And if that tone feels identical to this game, genuinely. Like the main story feels so cutthroat and so serious and so intense, and it's an incredibly drama-filled story that I am really loving. And then the side content of just oh, Kiri, will you help me with this thing? And it's just this random ass thing that is just, I don't know.
He's the man who just wears underpants on a bridge, all this stupid stuff. Yeah.
Or there's this guy's Kiri, I'm worried that my girlfriend is she's selling her body, she's selling sex. And it's like, oh, I'll go and investigate. That's not creepy at all. I'll go investigate. And it turns out that she's actually selling her used underwear online. And then, so the game just constantly exposes like all these seedy aspects of like Japanese culture, which I think is so fascinating. And being such a big fan of Japan, this game, aside from the seedy stuff, we can get there, but like this game is so much cozier than I expected. Like, yes, it's incredibly violent, it's incredibly cutthroat, it's very tense for large parts, but like the game makes it mechanically worthwhile to just go and grab some food from a restaurant, because I find you're stocking up on your food for battles at like 7-Elevens and stuff, where you want to make sure you can eat food on the go and get your health back. But if your health is low and you're just walking around the town, it actually makes more sense to go and eat at a restaurant, because then that just brings your health back to full, and you're not buying and eating. You're just going to a place, eating, and your health goes back to full. And it's that kind of, but like all these little things are almost become like little rituals within the world that kind of reinforce that kind of Japanese culture in a way, which I think is just really satisfying. And it's stuff like even the mini games. So the mini games I think are actually a lot more out of the way than I thought. I think that I've done karaoke a couple of times as part of the main story, but other than that,
it forces you. I did it today. It forces you right at the beginning to do one of the songs. When you and Nishikiya go to a bar, basically they make you do karaoke from the beginning.
Exactly, and there's one later that I've also done. And you know, I think that like I was saying the mini games, they're incredibly out of the way, and I'd even argue that most of the side quests and most of the minigames, most of the time, you're not even getting much good stuff from them. There's a handful of items I have got from side quests. There's one item that Kiryu has that it literally just gradually slowly recovers his health while he's in battle in a fight, which is incredibly useful. And I've got the equivalent for Majima, where it doesn't heal automatically. You have to be standing still in combat for it to heal. But anyway, I purposely like looked up that item because I was like, that item is so good. Can I get an equivalent for Majima? And the game was like, actually, it's a slightly different one. But my point is like the minigames are so out of the way, but they still have like this cozy charm to them. And some of the minigames are linked to side quests as well, which is also very satisfying. I think my favorite minigame so far is actually the baseball. And it's like a batting cage. And I looked up online, like, do you get anything for this? And like, no, they're like, actually the baseball, the only thing that you get is like the completion of the game or whatever. There's not actually like anything you really get for the baseball. And there's like completion percentages.
Is there stuff with a chicken with the baseball in this one? Is that a thing where there's a chicken?
If there is, I've not reached it yet.
Okay. I feel like there's a chicken involved in one of the baseball games in one of the games. I can't remember which, but that's a whole thing that takes place.
But it's just like these fun little things to do. And I would throw the side quests in there as well, where they are a lot lower stakes generally. Some of them are more serious, but like the stuff like spying on the girlfriend who was selling her underwear, or this guy's like, I wanted the last copy of this Dragon Quest equivalent game, and then
because Dragon Quest 3, because it's set in the 80s, so it's all about like Dragon Quest 3 is coming out and everyone's trying to buy it basically, which is really fun.
And then there's one where Kiryu like has to step in as a producer on this filming of an advert, and it's always
is that the Michael Jackson one? Like there's a Michael Jackson guy I think in this game, I want to say, like equivalent.
I don't think I've done that yet.
Okay, that might be the music video thing that's later on at some point.
And I've generally been open to like every time I speak to someone and they say, oh, can you help me with it? I say, yeah, let's just do it. And I'll do the side quests that I bump into, and I'll just go along with those. And most of them aren't that long anyway. And
I think the thing with side quests for me is just like the faces people pull and like the writing and how sharp it is and how funny it is. But then also it's like the music that happens at the end of one, where it's like na 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 na.
And it's like the same 5 themes that they use for all the side quests.
Yeah,
like the happy theme that we've worked out, the end of the side quest, it's finished theme, and there's and so other weird stuff in this game is like Don Quixote is like a real big brand. That's an actual brand that's in the game. So is like 7-Up and Corona beer, which I found really weird. So they've obviously done deals with these companies to involve their brands in the game, which I think is really interesting. I hadn't realized that at all. Which is strange when you're in Kamurocho that's based on Kabukicho, but they don't want to use that name. And then the game says very clearly, I don't know if this is just the director's cut, they're like, game is not based on real life. I think that they just want to distance themselves from the Yakuza is basically.
Oh, at the beginning, it does the fictional, it's not a fictional thing disclaimer.
Yeah, they want to say, like, if you are actually part of the Yakuza, don't come after us kind of thing. And that's where I think the game is so interesting, where what's the game getting at here? Like, the game seems incredibly proud to show Japan to a Western audience, but to show Japan warts and all. Like, it feels like it's very keen to say, yeah, this is Japan, and here's all the stuff you know about Japan, but you don't know enough. I bet you don't know about hostess clubs. I bet you don't know about the whole culture under that. I bet you don't know about how those clubs link to the Yakuza, and I bet you don't know much about the Yakuza and how they obviously have these like strongholds over parts of major Japanese cities, which is all very realistic in itself, which I think is just super interesting. And maybe the late 80s are slightly different, but I feel like the game is just so it almost dances with you to want to do like the seedier stuff, where you can like find the soft core porn on the street and go to it, and because it's the 1988, you go to a location to watch a screen, and you pay a guy to watch the screen, and then there's like a box of tissues next to it, and like the game is, but when you're watching her, and when I say soft core porn, like they're in like a swimsuit or bikini.
It's an FMV. It's a real woman, right?
Yeah, and
like,
it's an FMV. I didn't.
Yeah.
I should have said that. They're not naked or even topless. Right? It's just very.
No, they're just in bikinis or whatever, just like moving about.
But it's still, the game just makes you feel weird watching it, and that's definitely what they're going for, because you're watching. They're not full screen, as it were. You're watching a screen, an FMV within a screen within the screen. Within a screen, switch too. Yeah. And then it pans back, and then there's like the box of tissues, which just makes you feel really weird. And it's like, but that's what the game was going for. Like, they want you to understand that, like, this is how it is.
But it's also that like adherence to the reality of it, of you actually going to this location, paying money to do it, going into this room, it's showing you the actual actor. Like, there's and I think the Yakuza games get even better. I'm not sure if the director's cut does this. When you walk into a store, is there a loading screen when you go into the store, or does it naturally transition you?
It's a shortish. They're a little annoying when you're going in and out of places, but there is a short loading screen. Yeah.
Right, so like the big jump for me was when I played Kiwami, which has loading screens when you go between buildings. Then I played Judgment straight after, and Judgment obviously much later in the timeline, and obviously made much later on than Kiwami 1. And Judgment, you can walk straight into shops immediately, and so there's this the friction that existed is gone even more so that like that kind of like feeling of existing within this space is even more kind of like grounded in the later games. But yeah, just with Zero, they still have that sense of like, no, you're here existing within this space, and like, you can buy pocket tissues from this random person on the street, and like, do you even do anything with it? No, but it's going to go into your inventory, and it's going to be a thing that comes up every now and again. Yeah, I think that kind of groundedness.
But that's based on like a real thing where like they would put ads on pocket tissues, hand out the pocket tissues, and the job was done because the job was you looked at an ad. That's like So,
and like if you look at the healing bottles, when I went to Japan, I would look at these like almost energy drink type things in these small bottles.
Yes, they're like little shots. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're the same things that you use for Kiryu to heal in battle. And it's like everything. And I mean, obviously, the most obvious one for me was like, and I talked about this on my Japan audio log, is like vending machines. They're fucking everywhere in Japan. And in the Yakuza series, they are also fucking everywhere. And I thought this was just because of the game of like, you need to have vending machines so you can buy stuff. No, that's just Japan. There's fucking vending machines everywhere. So they just did it inside the game as well. And actually, I don't know how many there are in Zero versus the rest of the series. But yeah, it's a very recurring
Can I go up to the vending machines and use them? Because I've not been doing that. I've just been buying at shops.
Yeah, 100%. If you go to a vending machine, and I assume Zero, they still have vending machines that work. So yeah, go up to those and see you can buy drinks from them and upgrades and things like that. So
it just feels like the developers have put just an extraordinary amount of care into like really trying to replicate these real life places, and not just replicate them and you look at them, but replicate them and you are involved in them and need to go to these places, like I was saying. Like, and I just think when you do that, this game could have an awesome story and not even include any of that, But I think when you're actually talking about playing an RPG and genuine role playing, I think the game is very good at making you role play in a way that I definitely wasn't expecting. Like, I think that I knew that Yakuza was this big, grand, great story. I think the story's hitting highs that I didn't see coming. Like, I think it's already like really impressive. But I think that as a genuine RPG, it's just at a level that I'm definitely not. I've not played a ton of, third person 3D RPGs, to be honest. And like, I think that this is just a really unique one. Like, I think it's just doing something so different. And
it's interesting that you would classify it as an RPG. Is that because of the skill tree and because you're kind of like upgrading things with that?
The skill tree, you do seem to have stats, although I don't fully understand them. But like, you can equip items that do things, and I've not talked about the whole like linking of money to your experience and like that. I think that's very unique about this game, which there's no technical experience, as it were, but you can invest money. You get money in a range of ways. Like, I've only just started doing some of the business stuff in Kiryu's side of things. I've not done business stuff with Majima. And like some of that's a lot of complexity in a lot of this.
So the business stuff, and for Majima it will be the hostess club management.
Right.
Those I wouldn't call mini games. I would almost call them macro games, where they are like much bigger, much more involved affairs. And I would recommend looking up some guides for those, because they don't do a great job explaining how it all works in terms of the in-game tutorialization.
Right.
But those are, for me, from the Yakuza series, some of my favorite things in the whole series. Like the hostess stuff in Kiwami 2 is like, I spent half of my time playing that game just doing that, because it was so...
Does that operate the same way in Kiwami 2 as Yakuza 0?
0, I believe so, yes. I believe it's a similar setup there for the hostess stuff. And then the business minigame in Like a Dragon is like crazy expansive, and obviously Infinite Wealth is the one where they go off the deep end, where they have the island, which is Animal Crossing and building out everything up, and they also have the Pokemon minigame thing where you do an entire like leveling your Pokemon and fighting gym leaders and a whole story involving that stuff. Like, Infinite Wealth is like the apex of where this gets to eventually, but I do think that it's worth spending time in the business minigame and in the hostess management. Even if you don't finish them, they do have stories attached to them, and they do have like extra stuff that you can get from doing them.
But it also seems like they're linked to big money, and big money seems like a really important part of getting stronger and investing in your stances and things. So like, I am definitely keen on investing quite a bit of time into them, and I've done that with Kiryu's bit where I can. It's still early days on that stuff, but
but I think those are some of the best parts, I would argue, of the Yakuza series, are those macro games where you can put like a lot of time into this thing that is going to help you obviously in the main game, but like also has its own kind of sub story of its own. And like there's a payoff in Infinite Wealth for like the hostess stuff in 0, which is paid off like 8 games later, which I think it's so cool that the game series can do that over that period of time, which is awesome.
I've not mentioned the fighting at all. I'll admit, at the start of the game, after the first fight, I was like, right, I don't like this fighting. I'm going to turn this game down to easy, and I'm just here for the story and the vibes. And after a few fights, I was like, maybe I'm missing out on like some of the complexity of some of this fighting, because as simple as it seems, there's actually a bit more to this fighting system than I think I first realized. So I put the difficulty back up to normal, and everything just feels a lot better, I think, on normal, and it makes me more invested in the skill tree and the stances, and I don't want to just sweep by the fighting. If I reach a really tough boss and want to get past it, sure, I'll drop it down, and if I want to get by, but as things stand, I'm happy on normal and really enjoying it. Like, I think with Majima, I'm loving his slugger stance where you got the bat. Like, that just feels great. And then I like the more vanilla stance for Kiryu, where it's the best balance between fighting groups,
the rush
of enemies.
mode and the beast mode.
Exactly. Rush mode just seems really good for one-on-ones and awful at group, and then beast mode just seems very weird and slow, and I like the vanilla one.
Yes, I was using rush mode on the Kuze fight because he was in this back half of it, he was getting a bit too quick, and I was like, right, I'm going to switch to rush to kind of counter him. But I think I recommended to play on easy, and I do think that 0, at this point, the director's cut, it probably feels better to play than the original, so it's probably a bit smoother of an experience for you. I am also playing on normal at the moment. I might change. But I do find actually with these games, because of the way that you have the skill tree upgrades and you have health in your inventory, and managing that is quite interesting as well. And so if you're on easy, you'll never even have to think about that stuff. I do think it's worth kind of like just playing it regularly to see how you feel about it. Definitely the older games, it just wasn't worth it for me. So like Yakuza 3, like I don't want to play that game on normal because it's just frustrating more than anything, and it doesn't have the kind of skill tree stuff. It's much more basic in terms of its approach to combat and what you can get out of it. So but I think, you know, the place that you've landed, it makes sense, and you do, again, you have the option to change it whenever you want, so it's like you don't have to worry too much about it when it gets down to brass tacks. But the question I did want to ask is like how you doing with like the nomenclature and like the Tojo clan and the Dojimas and the Kazumas and all. Do you understand what's happening from like a broader Yakuza clan perspective, and who people are and how that stuff is kind of tying together? Or are you a little bit lost when it comes to that stuff?
I'm getting the grand sweeps, and like it is making sense. Could I name you every single character so far? No, but like I know the main ones, like Kuze obviously, and the three kind of lieutenants they introduced at the start, who are like, they're basically saying these are going to be your three bosses, like main big guys you're going to take down. Like Awami, I think, the guy with the hair and the purple suit.
Iwano, I think Iwano, and then
he's the main guy at the moment in the story for me. And
he's the guy with the purple suit, right?
Yes, yes. And I assume the third guy.
I can't
we've seen
remember
Dojima briefly. He appeared after the first Kuze fight, and then there's the kind of rival clan that I'm part of. It's not even a Yakuza clan. It's the businessman with the one hand.
Oh, Tachibana.
Tachibana, exactly. I'm working with his. Is he called? It's not Watto. It's like Mato. I can't remember.
I don't remember.
Yeah,
I've not gotten to that point yet.
And then Nishiki is your pal from childhood. I remember him, and he's important. And God, there's some story stuff with him that I've been invested in. And then over on the Majima side of things, Makoto is kind of the girl.
She's the girl, isn't she? Yeah.
And Lee, and you kind of understand about like the local Chinese population that's linked to like their own syndicate. So it's
right.
I'm getting enough to like feel invested and enjoy the story.
I guess from like Kiryu's perspective, what you need to understand is that all of these people exist under the one clan, which is the Tojo clan, right? The Tojo clan is like the giant, like 25,000 members. They all exist under the Tojo clan, and there are families underneath the Tojo clan.
Exactly.
So there's the confusing part is there's the Dojima family, and for some reason, even though Kiryu and Nishiki were brought up by Kazuma, from the Kazuma family, from orphanage, Kazuma has his own family, and there's Kashiwagi, who's the guy with the scar, who is the captain of the Kazuma family. Kiryu and Nishiki are technically under the Dojima family, not the Kazuma family. They talk about that at the beginning, which I didn't remember, and it was like, oh god, this is... I was like, when I was playing it, I was like, I hope Bali's okay with this, because it's really confusing. There's sub-families underneath the Tojo clan. The Tojo clan is kind of the core, and then underneath you have these captains, these people vying for power within the Tojo clan. And Kazuma has his own family, but he is the captain of the Tojo, captain of the Dojima, which is underneath the Tojo clan. There's just lots of names, and
Kazuma's in prison at the moment.
He is, so he's been put away in prison, and Kiryu's obviously worried because they think that he killed someone, and so now it might go back to Kazuma and all that sort of stuff. So
and it's interesting, like the whole the way that Yakuza treats civilians. Like killing a civilian's a really big deal. Like, and it's kind of like
it's like the honor aspect of the Yakuza, right? Of like Kuze cutting his pinky off at the start,
exactly.
like that sort of thing.
Yeah, and Kuze he's a really like, and I should say I've also done what you recommended, which is Japanese voice actors with subtitles, and I'm really enjoying that. And like some of the gruff tones of like Kuze, like his voice is like so intimidating, and like some of those older gruffer sounding voice acting I think is just really impressive.
I do appreciate that some people will want to play stuff in English, and I totally get that. It's like, you know, easier for people to digest, whatever, but there's something about it just feels wrong to me to play a game like this in English.
But I think someone was saying this about something else, and it's like actually, for a lot of these Japanese games, they pay bigger salaries and bigger voice actors for the Japanese over the English, because that's their main market. They want to aim at is obviously the Japanese market. So they're like,
true,
right, well, we'll get the biggest high honchos in the Japanese voice acting scene, and we'll get some other people. No offense to the Western English voice actors, but
no,
they're often not quite the level of, the Japanese. And I'd be interesting if Yakuza was also an example of this, but yeah, so far I'm very impressed.
Yeah, they tend to kind of stunt cast sometimes. Like they got Danny DeVito, I think, for a role in Infinite Wealth. Or am I thinking of a different actor? Not Danny DeVito. It's another Danny Trejo. I think Danny Trejo is who it was in Infinite Wealth. And his likeness is in the game. But because I'm playing in Japanese, I'm getting the Japanese person with his face, which is very interesting. And obviously, Stranger Than Heaven has the whole Snoop Dogg and Tupac thing going on with it, which is it's a whole other can of worms. But that's definitely like a thing with this series in terms of like there's a lot of famous Japanese like celebrities sometimes who show up in the Yakuza games as well. I'm glad that you're kind of like keeping up with it and figuring stuff out and as you go.
And I've been going fairly intensely for the last little while. Like I'm going to play another game for next time, but like I've been trying to be like, right, if I'm going to beat this game before the end of the year, like I need to just crack on. So I'm trying to play at least. Rather than 10 hours a month, I'm going to try and up it to like 15 a month and beat it in the next 2-3 months.
And you've been playing, you said, just on handheld, mainly on Switch 2. How is it? How's it look? How's it feeling?
Just handheld. Feels good. I'll consistently get in like half an hour in bed and play lots during the day as well. And it's very easy to pick up and play, and like the pacing of a lot, even the main quests, that they don't feel overly elongated. And like if I dedicate a bit of time to something, I will often move on to the next chapter. It's not like, right, I'm now spending 6-7 hours in this one chapter like it's normally. There's some longer chapters, but
you're getting good forward progression.
Yeah, I'm feeling good forward progression. I think I looked up, there's like 17 chapters. I'm on chapter 7, so that's fine with me. Like I'm getting there. So yeah, it's good. I think it's a good recommendation so far, MBZ, and it's a good pick as well, because it's so long that I would have struggled to just by my own free will carved out like the time to fit it in. So like, right, here we go, gonna focus on this. And it's obviously like it's telling everything in a way that is good for someone who hasn't played any Yakuza games. That's obviously why this game was made. But like it's doing that job well so far. Yeah, no, I knew the Japan stuff would resonate with you. I was always like confident in that, but I was curious about like the storytelling and like the kind of characters and the side quests and all that sort of stuff and how that would land. But I'm glad that you seem to be enjoying all that stuff. For me, it's always been like the tonal whiplash between the melodrama of the main story and the utter stupidity of the side quest that has always been my favorite thing about the series. I do think that Zero has some of the stupidest, funnest side stories out there, so I look forward to you digging into some more of those, but also obviously getting some really emotional, kind of heartfelt and very raw kind of main story stuff that I think is really really well done. People say Zero is their favorite for a reason, right? Like I think there's that main story really does hit and it does work very strongly. So it's got some great stuff. I'll check in again when I've played more, and then like I said, when we've both finished it, it'd be good to cover some of those story beats. Yeah, we can do a good chat about it. It's so interesting, and I do think that like when you think about traditional game stories and what they go after and what they're about, it's always such obvious stuff, and this is like, okay, there's this piece of land that people don't own, and these people want to buy it to sell it, and then this other faction also wants to, and it's like there's just like the whole thing centers around an empty lot, a piece of property that people are trying to vie over, and it's such a, I feel it's so unique in terms of like the setup and what they are, the type of story that they're telling, and how it all kind of comes together, and the sides that are kind of looking to exploit and benefit from it. And I'd say Yakuza does that quite frequently, right? Like Judgment is about Alzheimer's, ultimately. It's about the Alzheimer's epidemic in Japan and like how people are dealing with that and what that means for the country and all these sort of things. Like they're quite political stories a lot of the time, and they deal with like more broad kind of things that are happening within the country, which I think is very relevant because they often come out, at the interesting thing about every Yakuza game, aside from Zero, is that
the year they release is the year that they take place in the actual game, basically.
Oh wow, okay, that's very
I
interesting.
think I mentioned this to you, but Infinite Wealth, they reference COVID because it happened after COVID has happened, type stuff. So yeah, they're very kind of like reality bound in some senses, even though they are obviously very silly and don't adhere to all that sort of stuff, but they reference it for sure. Yeah.
Nice.
Excellent. Well, that's really good. Very, very happy with that. One more game from me. I'll briefly talk on it, and I might talk more when I've played the next thing. But I played Deltarune Chapter 4, which came out last year during the Switch 2 launch. Back then, I just played Chapter 3 and was like, great, I'll get to 4 at some point. And then I was like, I should really play Deltarune. It's... Chapter 5 came out this year, and I would like to get to that as well. And I was like, I'm on behind, so I should probably play this first. And I really, really enjoyed it. I think that Deltarune is a really interesting series in that it is ultimately like Undertale was this massive mega hit, right? And did super, super well. And it's really like a 6-hour game at the end of the day. It's quite this short thing, and yeah, it like had this massive fandom, and so many things spawned from it. I think did you watch that video from Super Eye Patch Wolf that I sent you about Undertale and all that sort of stuff?
Yes, I did. Yes. Quite a while ago now, but yeah, it was good.
It's all about the fandom around Undertale and how kind of much of a mega hit it became. And Deltarune feels
a bit bigger than I had realized.
Quite a bit bigger, yeah. Yes. But Deltarune feels like a real response to Undertale in so many ways. Of like, Undertale was about choice, and like you can do what you want, kill all the monsters or save them, do a genocide or do a pacifist route, right? And like the player's role in that, and like how the game responds to you, and like the idea of like seeing everything in a game, and how, you know, the game kind of punishes you for trying to do stuff like that. And Deltarune from the very beginning has been about, like, the first thing you do in Deltarune is like you say, you know, what is this, what's your name, blah blah blah, make all these choices, and the game's like, basically, fuck you, no, you don't get to choose, this is this and this is what's going to happen, essentially. And the game is very much playing with that idea. This is light spoilers, I guess, for Deltarune, but your main character, there is I will say, a separation between you controlling the main character and what the main character themselves actually wants to do. And there are things in Deltarune Chapter 4 and the way they play with that are really clever, of how they make that work mechanically. And the game, usually every chapter is split into a day. So like Deltarune's going to be 7 chapters. It's 7 days of a week, essentially. So every chapter is the next day in the story, essentially. And so usually what happens is you wake up, you go to school, you have some kind of story stuff, and then you go into the dark world, which is where you do all the RPG combat and you fight enemies, and like you find these areas called dark fountains. You have to close them up and then go back into the real world. And this chapter spends more time in the regular world at the beginning, and it sets a lot of interesting things up and starts showing you things that you're like, what is going on here? There's some things happening with these characters in the world that feel really unsettling and weird, and I'm quite concerned for what's happening. And then you go into the dark world, and then you start doing all that stuff. But even in that space, it feels like they're moving kind of the core main story along a lot more in this chapter. The previous chapter felt a bit more like a kind of sub-story of like, more like a cartoon episode of like, oh, this is the monster of the week. It's like, oh, we're going to do a TV show theme, and it's going to be around this character who's the television, and he's going to make you play these games and do like lots of mini games and stuff, and we're going to do like a quiz and those types of things. And it was fun. I think it was really varied in terms of the mechanics it did, and like the whole kind of like Dragon Quest like sub game that you play within the game, and all that sort of stuff. But this really feels like, oh, now we're really focusing more on the main story and pushing things forward and kind of revealing a few things, but also like, I don't know, doing a really good job with character work. I think ultimately the thing that makes Undertale work and what makes Deltarune resonate as well is, you know, he has all these kind of like weird characters and like random people saying stuff and all this kind of like memes and those types of things, which is kind of core to his humor and a sense of style. But I think just the character writing is really strong across the series, across all these games, and the sharpness and pithiness of the words and the writing and how it's all put together. And you really care about these characters, and the growth that they've gone through in the last 4 chapters is really evident. And I think he's done such a good job of like kind of creating that connection and bond between these characters, so that when bad things happen to them, you're really going to care, right? And I think that's it's a very important aspect of why Undertale and Deltarune resonate so strongly, despite the simplistic visual style and the way that it looks. I think it speaks to how strong the writing is, and obviously the music alongside it to kind of carry that feeling and that sense across. So really, really enjoy Chapter 4. I've heard that Chapter 5 is kind of like the last, I don't know, kind of dalliance, like side kind of thing before we get into the real meat of things with Chapter 6 and 7 when those eventually come out. But yes, I'll definitely jump onto Chapter 5 soon, and then I'll be waiting with everyone else for the next one and kind of finishing off when Chapter 7 comes out. I do think when Chapter 7 comes out, that's when this game's going to get a big kind of like recognition from everybody. It's almost like with Return of the King at the Oscars, where like Lord of the Rings was over these 3 years and it built up and eventually it wins 11 Oscars. I do think that Deltarune is eventually going to be showing up in all these Game of the Year conversations once Chapter 7 is out, and it's like, look at this thing that has been done over this kind of almost decade of time, that has been this really big accomplishment, and yeah, really, really cool. So I very thoroughly enjoyed it, and yeah, definitely think it's something that you should get to at some point, Bally, maybe when it's all done, as opposed to kind of like playing it in bite-sized chunks. I think I like it more than Undertale overall. Like, I really liked Undertale a lot, but I was never kind of crazy about it in the way that everyone else is.
Is it mechanically similar? It's the same
it is, but
idea?
I think it's better because you have 3 party members and they can each do stuff within the fight, and so you are still doing the bullet dodging element of like you have your heart in the box and each enemy has a totally unique pattern that you have to avoid, and it's still, you know, I guess you can attack people versus like just acting or trying to be pacifist about it. I've generally speaking just been pacifist and just been doing that route. But again, I don't know if it matters because this game seems to be saying I'm the one in control here and it doesn't really matter what choices you make, which is curious because there is a secret route in Deltarune as well. And this is one of the things that I've had to look up after the fact because I'm not going to play it through a second time just to see like kind of the hidden route, but there is a much darker, much more sinister route that the fandom called Snowgrave initially, but now I think everyone's calling the Weird route. And Chapter 2 is when it started, and it is it's not nice what happens, and very creepy. And I watched a video last night having finished Chapter 4 of like what the Snowgrave route looks like continued through Chapter 3 and 4, and this shit is real rough. So I'm very interested to see where that goes and what that is ultimately gonna lead to, because I feel like there's gonna be some kind of rug pulled with it because it feels like this game is such an inversion of Undertale. I mean, the name of Deltarune, for God's sake, is an anagram of Undertale in the first place. So, like, I feel like there's some subversion that's going to happen, that's going to go on here. So, we'll see. But, glad that I finally got around to this. And, yeah, still have a little bit more to go before I'm caught up. But, I don't think the next chapter is coming until 2027. So, I've got some time to get things in order before that happens.
Solid.
Great. All right, well, I think that is going to do us for this segment. Don't go anywhere, however, because we'll be back after the break with your emails. We'll see you in a bit.
hello, and welcome back to the second part of today's show. It's that time again, the time for some emails. Feels like we've not done these in quite a while, MZ, but
yeah,
we put out the call during the drought, the real life drought, and the metaphorical email drought, and we've had a few, so that's very welcome. So thank you to everyone who's written in. If you would like to email,
but we always need more.
Yes, we always need more. If you would like to email the show, please email ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That's ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. And as I always say, we have a channel in our Discord server also called Emails. You can also post your emails, questions, comments over there, and we would welcome all emails. Our first email this time is from Brandon. Says, hello, Brandon here. Question for you both. I'm a 30-year-old gamer who never played Nintendo staples growing up. Poor deprived soul, honestly. I played Nintendo staples.
Yeah, terrible.
I got into Zelda with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. With the recent news of The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time remake, I am a little hesitant to play it since most of the older Zelda games seem to be more of a puzzle game with the dungeons rather than the action-adventure games that I have played. Do you think it will be something someone like me would enjoy? I know nothing about the story other than what you guys have spoken about. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's interesting that puzzle is kind of put here as a thing that the older Zelda games do, when I would argue there's a lot of puzzles in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I would argue that like a majority of the shrines in Breath of the Wild are puzzle. Obviously you have the combat ones, right, that you go into and you have like the things you fight, but I do think that there are a lot of puzzles within those spaces. Now the difference obviously is that in those games you are applying your own solution a lot of the times to those puzzles, so there isn't a one size fit all, this is the answer, you have to do it this way, which could be a frustration point potentially, but you still have to think, right? You still have to like look at the world and decide like, how am I going to get over there, or how am I going to move this thing or whatever, in a puzzly type way. So yeah, despite obviously those games being very open and exploration-y and all this sort of stuff, I still think the puzzle element of Zelda is quite strong, and I think that's why I still really like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, because I think ultimately if they didn't have the puzzle stuff, I don't think I would like them quite as much, right? Because I do think that puzzle is a core element to Zelda on a bit of a DNA level, and I think that's that's kind of my feelings on those. But I guess like going back to stuff like Ocarina of Time, do you think that they, from like a dungeon perspective, are more puzzle than anything else?
No, I think the pacing of a game like Ocarina of Time, and even like a Wind Waker, or even the Twilight Princess, there's a lot of story, there's a lot of adventure, there's a lot of exploration, there's a lot of combat, and there's puzzles. Like I think puzzles just make up one part of maybe 5 main things about Ocarina of Time. I also don't think that the puzzles in Ocarina of Time are any more difficult than Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. So if you're thinking, oh, the older games are more puzzly and more challenging or something, I'm put off by that. I wouldn't be. I don't think the puzzles in Ocarina of Time are that bad. And if anything, I think the vast majority of them are simpler than most of the puzzles in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, you definitely have to think, and I will say that I think if we're talking about dungeons specifically, I would say the balance is probably, I don't know, 40-60 in terms of like 40% puzzle, 60% combat. That tends to be, I would say, in like the older 3D Zeldas, maybe what the balance is struck. I would say Ocarina is the one that really started that, because Link to the Past is very combat focused, even within the dungeon spaces, right? And I would argue the puzzle in Link to the Past is much more navigational as opposed to individual puzzles within rooms. And I think, dungeon exploration, maybe like the navigational aspect of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild in those bigger dungeons isn't actually that important. I mean, it is in some senses, like in terms of like getting through the earth with that fucking ability in Tears of the Kingdom, where you kind of like I can't remember now. Go up, but yeah, people were like up through the ground, but people were breaking like some of the dungeons using that, and then I guess that is somewhat navigate, but it's not like, I think the older Zelda games require you to think about the space and where you have been and where you're going and how to get from one spot to the other in a much deeper way, I would argue, than the modern Zelda games. So if we're talking about puzzle from that kind of navigational puzzle perspective, then yes, that is that is a part of these games. But I would argue Link to the Past leans heavier in that direction than the games that come after it, where like by the time we get to Skyward Sword, like there's lots of puzzles within the dungeon, but it feels kind of natural with the progression of the navigation as well. So it all feels tied together, where there are bespoke puzzles you're doing that are then opening up the kind of routes and back doors and things in the dungeon itself for you to get to areas. So, yeah.
I do think like Ocarina of Time is an incredibly strong game. I think it's aged very well. We both played the 3DS remake. Obviously, I think this remake will hopefully be an even smoother, more enjoyable experience than that. And I think it's also important to keep in mind that it feels completely different to Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. There's parts of the DNA that are maintained between the two styles of Zelda, but I think will you enjoy Ocarina of Time? Like, yes, because it's an all-time
it's a really good video
that has
game,
aged very well, and they are remaking a game that has already aged very well in my mind. And I think it will be fantastic. Like, I think that I think the story of Ocarina of Time is strong for a Zelda. I don't think Zelda stories are particularly strong as narrative video games anyway, but I do think the story of Ocarina is strong. I think the music is fantastic. I think the music is far stronger than like a Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, where a lot of that music is just saved for important cutscenes, whereas Ocarina of Time has just got a timeless soundtrack. I think Ocarina of Time feels epic, which I don't think you can make that same argument about for many games from that era. Like, I think there's just something about it, the length of the game, the size of some of those dungeons, like they're meaty dungeons that do take a bit of time, but they feel great. Like, I think that puzzle wise they're not that bad. Often you're just kind of moving into a room, clearing the enemies out, and then solving the puzzle and moving on. Like, that's the cadence of a lot of those Zeldas at the time. And yeah, the reason I also put this question now is because we might get more information on Ocarina of Time remake between now and November. So like, well, we have to, but I mean, like, just now in the next few weeks. So yeah, I think that it's a great game to play, and I cannot wait to see more of this remake to come. So yeah,
I think in terms of puzzle design in Ocarina, it is very much a push blocks onto things, press buttons, like use your arrow to hit an eyeball switch in the sky.
Change the level of the water in the water dungeon. Like,
yes,
that's quite
right, which I would argue is more of a navigational puzzle than like a...
Yeah, and that's probably the hardest navigational puzzle in the game, and is famous for it. But I think they had the paint to help you with that in the 3DS remake, and they will
the arrows on the floor made it so much more playable, for sure.
They'll 100% have all that for this remake as well, because they want to make that a bit simpler.
And I think a thing that we sometimes forget about with these older Zelda games is that a lot of the dungeons are built around that first half, second half flip, where in the first half you're using all the items that you currently have and trying to figure out ways around using certain things that you have acquired before, and then you get an item in the middle from a mini boss, and then it flips the back half of the dungeon to focus around puzzles involving this new thing, where it's going to teach you stuff about that new item as well as give you things and challenges to solve while using it at the same time. And so I think it does a very good job of introducing an aspect and then saying, okay, now use this for the rest of this area in order to kind of solve what's ahead. I think Arbiter's Grounds and Twilight Princess is probably the easiest example of this, where it's like, okay, you go through and you're doing kind of like a... similar to the Forest Temple, actually, in Ocarinas, like Arbiter's Grounds and that have a very similar first half, where you're trying to find the 4 things to open a door, and then you go through the door, fight a mini-boss, get the spinner, and then you're doing spinner stuff for the rest of the dungeon, essentially.
Right.
And I do think the games that come after Ocarina are more bespoke puzzle-focused, and it often comes down to like the items that you have, like the ball and chain or like the Dominion Rod, where the Dominion Rod is just a puzzle tool at the end of the day.
Yes.
Like it is used in combat for certain specific boss fights, but it's ultimately a very puzzle focused thing. And Skyward Sword is the same. The beetle that we talk about all the time, like there's so many little, like the whip and the way that is used to pull switches and also navigate areas. Those games really take the puzzle element, I would argue, further. And I would say Ocarina of Time does have a good amount of puzzles, but I think it strikes a really good balance between that and between other stuff within the dungeons and the wider game as well.
For the most part, Ocarina is turning previous items that were 2D into a 3D setting. I don't think Ocarina has a ton of original weapons and items and tools used.
I'd say like the iron boots and like the floating boots are kind of the two that kind of stand out to me as like things in a 3D space that hadn't really been done. And I guess the hook shot in 3D is quite different to its application in the 2D games, right? So they definitely have flipped some things with that game, but for the most part you're getting things that you are going to expect and are going to work in a way that will be interesting, but it's kind of like reading Dune after having read a bunch of other sci-fi novels that have come after it, right? It's like, well, this is the original and it started a lot of things, a lot of ideas, but you've already played other games that had those ideas. Although in this case, you haven't, I guess, because you've only played the more modern Zeldas and not the kind of Skyward and Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, which were influenced by Ocarina of Time.
But join us, come, November 19th. We're gonna
That's it. They're putting out same day as GTA 6.
We're gonna all join together and play some Ocarina of Time remake, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah. On that point, Bally, have you changed your stance on what you think Ocarina of Time remake is as a one-to-one remake versus changing things or updating things?
Yeah, can you remind me of my stance? Is the first question.
Well, I believe your stance was that you think they're going to change stuff. You think it's going to be a bit more substantial of a remake as opposed to a like one-to-one thing. Which there was that little Nintendo website snafu where they had I can't remember the wording specifically, but it implied like timeless gameplay, I think was the phrase, right? And so people were like, what does timeless gameplay mean? Does that mean it's the exact same as the original game, or what's going to change? How are you feeling subsequent to kind of things like that coming out?
I stand by they have to do something substantial to Hyrule Field, otherwise they will have a bit of a damp squib of a reveal. And I think I think they could have avoided this if we had seen Hyrule Field at the first reveal, but they've decided to do the slowly catchy monkey approach of, we're just going to show Link in his bed. That's all we're going to show him, and then we're going to reveal more later. And my gut still says, if you're going to show more later, there has to be more to show later. It cannot just be the same game with a new art style. It's got to be a bit more fundamental. So that's where I'm at the moment.
Could you not also argue though that if there's not much difference, maybe teasing it out is a better approach to take than from the beginning saying, oh, it's just going to be the same, because then they don't have people having the interest to come back and see if anything
they can already get the pre-orders in before you see the but I don't know. I like to hope they don't do these things to almost trick an audience, or not. That's a bit strong word, but like to trap an audience, just to be like, oh, you're gonna like it, and ta-da! Nintendo have been good at their ta-da moments, I'd argue, in the last decade or so. And you think of the reveal, we had the Mario Odyssey reveal, and then we got the Cappy reveal later. That was an amazing ta-da moment. We had multiple ta-da moments with the reveal of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I get that this is a remake and that whole argument is very different, but if you want a ta-da moment, it's got to be a substantial reinvention of Hyrule Field that makes a newcomer like Brandon say, wow, I've just come off of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and now I want to play Ocarina of Time remake. And if they can't get that audience, then why are we even making this remake? Like, I think that their number one goal should be, we need to entice the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom audience into Ocarina of Time. Now, they might be able to do that anyway, because that audience now owns Nintendo Switches, which they didn't previously. So maybe that conundrum is not as difficult as I'm making it out to be. But in my opinion, they need something that ties Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild to Ocarina in a more visual, enticing landscape nature that will get that audience on board. Yeah,
we'll see. I'm still pretty confident. I'm very confident this is Nintendo. They don't give a fuck. They just do the same thing again. Like, I mean, it's the. Let's be honest with ourselves. This is the Nintendo. We've been through this rodeo many times. They just put out a Star Fox game this year. Guess what it was? Same fucking video game again. Nintendo like to give you the same video game again, and that's
it is all ahead of the Zelda film, which will be very Ocarina of Time based,
yes,
won't it? And
very likely as well.
There's definitely coordination going on now. As
I think it's likely that we get a direct in September where they do a proper trailer for the game, and then we'll do a Zelda direct in October before it comes out in November. That's my feeling right now. Is we'll get one more trailer in a direct, and then we're going to get a deeper dive in a follow-up presentation, similar to what Star Fox had, where it's like, here's the game, it's 20 minutes of Ocarina of Time, and explaining Ocarina of Time to an audience who's never played it before.
Star Fox didn't have the numerous steps to my memory. It was just like
no, you're right.
Ta-da, yeah. Here's the thing, here's the 20-minute thing, boom.
Yes.
If the Ocarina of, I want to hold on to my hope. Ocarina of Time is not Star Fox. Like it's bigger and has a much bigger potential audience. And I think that if they are doing the step by step, and we're very clear that they are doing the step by step, because you wouldn't do a step by step if the first step wasn't friggin' starting with Link in the bed. So like we've started with Link in the bed, right? Let's try and get Link outside his bed, maybe outside the room, maybe even outside of the town of Kokiri. But we need to get out of the bed first. And if we're going to do the step by step, that there has to be ways you ratchet up in the same way, like I was saying about Mario Odyssey. If there's no ratchet up of the hype, then like I'm gonna be super disappointed. Maybe I'm getting myself overly hyped, but we cannot do step by step just to have a remake with a new paint job. It's got to be something a bit more. I don't know.
We'll see. Won't be long. We'll find out.
Don't have to wait long for my questions to be answered and my disappointment. And if Nintendo really disappoint me, then I guess I'll have to go to the dark side of GTA 6. That's my. I guess so. That's the ultimate.
You'll have to play a bad video game instead. It's a real shame, but it's fine. Nintendo already has Game of the Year coming up. It's Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. Did you see those fucking previews? Oh my god, I'm so excited. Jesus Christ, people are excited. It's clear that people have the full game because the preview, quote unquote, was like 30 hours or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, you just have the cartridge, don't you? Basically, the download code, I guess.
They're only allowed to talk about a little bit, but yeah.
It's up to like the first 5 chapters, but Skill Up in his video basically played the first 5 chapters for every character, all 4 of them, and so he put 30 hours into it for the preview, and I'm like, oh man, it's just everything that people have said about it so far. I am fucking excited. So yeah, very, very much looking forward to that when it comes. But there's gonna be that and Ocarina, who are the kind of the big hitters I think later this year for Nintendo at this point in time. Unless I'm missing something, which I can't remember. What else? I guess Switch Sports Resort is coming.
Oh yeah.
At some point, I don't remember when that's happening. Good point. That's October or something, which is shame. It's missing the summer because it kind of feels like it should be then. Right. But, oh well.
Yeah. Good question, Brandon. Well, hopefully. Yeah. Nintendo will surprise us. You're interested in Ocarina of Time and give it a go.
And even if they don't, even if it is a 1-to-1 remake of Ocarina
go
of
for
Time,
it anyway. If you've never played it
you
before.
should definitely play
100%, 100%. Our next question from Mike C from South Wales. I think this is a bit of a doozy, MBZ, I must say.
All right, here we go.
Dear Bally and MBZ, here's a question I've already posed to RFN and still waiting to hear their wisdom, so I thought I'd see if your customer service standards were any better. I have recently bought £50 worth of Nintendo shares. In less than 2 weeks, I have already made a gain of £1 and 38 pence. Should I go all in and invest my life savings in Nintendo shares? What do you see as the prospects for Nintendo over the next 5 years? And more importantly, the share price, given Nintendo shareholders are generally insane and irrational. What could Nintendo do to really juice their share price? And what mistakes might they make which really puts my £50 at risk? With Xbox struggling and Sony making a few missteps, how do you see Nintendo being impacted by or immune to the prospects of their competition? Thanks very much, Mike C. from South Wales. And he says, a P.S. I really enjoy the show, and especially your childhood reminiscing, which reminds me of the fun times I used to have at sleepovers playing Streets of Rage 2 with my mates. See, Emmy said, what were we playing at our sleepovers? It was not Streets of Rage 2.
We were playing Pokemon Stadium. Is what we were playing. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Right. I think we should also point out Mike C doesn't disclose how much his life savings is. But the idea of life savings implies it's a very important amount to Mike. So
yes. This is important, Bally. Big decisions here.
Not official financial advice. We're going to
say
that.
This is not financial advice.
We're just Nintendo fans over here.
So Nintendo and the market. They have obviously had big ups and downs, lots of big ups and downs. And the one thing we know about shareholders is they're really stupid, as illustrated by the fact that when Pokemon Go was doing really well, everyone started buying Nintendo shares, even though Nintendo wasn't really the company that was mostly benefiting from that, and people didn't realize that was the case. So, yes, knowing that shareholders are stupid, that's always a thing that you have to keep in mind. Is it worth putting money into Nintendo right now? I would argue Nintendo are not at a peak necessarily, but they are higher up than they have been in a long time. And I think, honestly, obviously the best time to invest in Nintendo is when they're doing badly, because we know that they have a lot of cash reserves, and they have, even if they had 3 Wii U's in a row, they probably would still survive as a business, right? Just because of how judicious they are with the money that they keep in the back pocket and their ability to...
Please don't have 3 Wii U's in a row.
No, I know, but in a theoretical world,
yes.
I think it's possible, right,
agree.
for them to do that. So I almost think that just because of the way the industry goes and the way things go up and down, I would think there might be a time when Nintendo goes down again. The only thing is that right now it does feel like that they're on quite a hot streak, and they're not making poor decisions that would put them down a bad path. The future of hardware and games is the thing that I think is the most important thing here ultimately, because it's going to get more expensive for all of these pieces of hardware to be shipped. I think their competitors are even more fucked because they're coming to the ends of their generation, which is wild to say because it feels like those generations have barely started, and yet we're like 6 years into those. I think that it's going to be a rude awakening for Sony and Microsoft when those consoles come out, because no one's going to buy them because they're way too fucking expensive. And Nintendo, I think, are going to benefit from that in the short term, because the Switch 2 is going to look way more appealing than a PlayStation 6 is from just a pure cost perspective, right? It's going to be less than half of what a PlayStation 6 is. And so, of course, a consumer is going to go over to Nintendo. So in that short-term sense, I do think that we're probably going to see a rise in Nintendo's kind of share price and stuff in the next couple of years. But once we get to like the waning years of the Switch 2, which is 6 years time or so, that's when things are probably going to get a little bit scarier, because it's a question of, is it still relevant? What are people doing? Are they on PCs now? Is PC still too expensive? Is everyone just playing Roblox now? Like, who knows in 5 years time what that's going to be? But I think over the next 5 years, I do think Nintendo are going to be a relatively safe position, just because they already have hardware on the market, and it's cheaper and it's less powerful than the competition, which means that their threshold for going up is going to have a ceiling that is going to be much lower than what Sony and Microsoft have. So yeah, I think I would have bought Nintendo shares probably, obviously in the Wii U era. That's when you would have wanted to buy them, because that's when they were at their lowest, and that's when obviously they're gonna, anything that comes after is gonna be better than that just by default because of how terrible it was. I struggle to see a point where Nintendo gets back to a Wii U style of failure again, given where they are currently at in the moment. And I think just the way that their IPs have held sway over the last decade or so since the Switch 1 happened, of like, kids know what these are, and I think in the Wii U days they were at risk of losing that kind of idea and identity of what Nintendo was potentially. Any thoughts, Bally, on what's going to happen?
I agree with your assessment. I think that this is a very, very, very good time to invest in Nintendo, because unlike 5 years ago, if you were doing this equivalent 5 years ago, I think Nintendo have overcome 2 tricky transitions in that time and been successful from it. So it's like 5 years ago, they were still on the high of the Switch 1. It had done really well. I think most of the main IP was already out by that point, and the Switch 1 was middle to later in its life cycle, doing great. The difference with Nintendo back then is twofold. One, they hadn't launched the Switch 2 yet. And 2, they hadn't entered the theme park and film industry yet. I think that if you were an investor in Nintendo back then, who the fuck knows what was going to happen when Nintendo went for a Mario film? And I think that film has far surpassed expectations, and the Galaxy film, and even if Zelda comes out next year and gets panned at the critics, I think it's still like box office numbers going to do absolutely
it's going to make a boatload of money.
Going to make a boatload of money. I think that it is now a very safe bet to say like a DK film will do fine. I think a Star Fox film will do fine. They might have a Pikmin film or a Kirby film. Like, they've established that relationship with Illumination. They've done that in the last 5 years. It's secure. They've got the contracts in place, and they can just keep making huge films that will reinforce that IP, keep selling their units, and get over. And so my point is, they've already got over the hump of doing theme parks and doing films, and they're just going to continue that. And that's just going to go up and up and up. And I think that will increase the share value of Nintendo, even aside to the console. In terms of the console market, they've done the tricky transition. They have transitioned to their next generation of hardware in a time when the RAM price is through the roof. Parts more widely are very difficult. People are arguing about data centers and AI is on the rise. Like, they've gone across all those hurdles, and the Switch 2 has launched, and it's done very well. I think where the Switch 2 has a huge advantage if you invest now in Nintendo is that we still have all the main IP of Nintendo to come on the Switch 2. The only IP we've had is a new DK game. We've had a Splatoon spin-off game. What am I forgetting? Like, we've not had much.
Mario Kart. They have Mario Kart. We
have had Mario Kart. That was a big failure, arguably, like in terms of like number of hits, and that is an issue. But they still have 3D Mario. They've got Zelda to come. They've got Super Smash Brothers to come. They've got Animal Crossing to come. Splatoon.
Yes.
Kirby. You can keep going. There's so many big IP games that will likely become the top selling or just second best selling after their Switch 1 counterparts in the series, that I think the Nintendo share value for all of these games and all of them coming out. Pokemon, like, there's so much to come on Nintendo Switch 2.
Right, Wind and Waves is not out yet.
Exactly. Like, when you marry up the IP to come on Switch 2 and the fact that you've got the cinema, the film franchises rolling their way out, and the theme parks are only growing, and they don't even have to transition to a console after the Switch 2 for at least 5 years to come, I think the next 5 years are going to be some of Nintendo's safest growth years that you could argue they've had in the last 30 years, genuinely.
Yeah, that's I didn't think about the film stuff at all, but you're totally correct on that point of like,
because they don't have to do any transitions in the next 5 years. They've done them already. Yeah. They've made those are the risky parts. Everything is a lot safer from here.
Right, like I think Nintendo as a broader IP business is in full swing at this point, right? Like, we talk about how in the Wii U days they were starting to do these things because they realized that they couldn't just rely on the console business to be the thing that, you know, does their business every single time. And when they have a failure, they need other stuff. So they started doing mobile, and they started doing the theme park stuff, and started thinking about wider movie and TV and all that sort of stuff. And now that we're here with 2 movies under their belt, both billion-dollar movies, right? I want to say. As well as having the theme parks, and just generally because of the success of the Switch, Nintendo IPs are so broadly understood and known globally. There's just a podium they're sitting on right now, and they are able to use all these IP and put them out there and do really well with them, and then they can expand even further, right? They can do more than just what they're currently doing, and find other ventures to move into, other things that they can do to kind of broaden the IP even further, to kind of like cement themselves as a globally understood brand, essentially. So yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And if we're thinking about, you know, not just the console, but just Nintendo as a business, not like Disney yet, but like in a way towards a Disney-like model of becoming so IP focused that they can put those things in loads of different places, then yeah, I do see that being a thing. Like, are we going to start seeing more Nintendo stores around the globe, right? Is that the next step of having presence, like in a retail fashion? Could argue old-fashioned at this point in time, given, you know, people just buy things online still, but I still think there's a footprint that you can have and a identity you can have by doing that. They start a fucking restaurant, you know? They start a Nintendo fucking... They have so many different options that they could take in terms of just, you know, building out what they want to do that is beyond the regular old, it's a video game console. So, yeah, I do think future prospects are pretty strong. Now, in terms of putting your life savings into Nintendo, I don't know that you're going to get an insane
return
amount back, right? Because I think the insane swings come from going from the Wii U to the Switch, or going from the GameCube to the Wii, right? Like, those are where the insane swings happen, because you're going from rock bottom to top of the fucking world. And I do think it's gonna be going up, but it won't be going up at a rate that is like crazy, right? It will be going up steadily and gradually and safely. But I don't think you're going to be walking out here as like a billionaire, right? You're going to be making a bit of money, and maybe from the £50, let's say, I don't know, maybe you're walking away with £60 in 5 years' time, potentially, like a good, like healthy amount. But it's not. I don't think it's going to be insane.
At the same time, what you're suggesting of like that period between console life cycles is your biggest potential for massive growth. I think it's also your biggest potential for massive loss, because I think those transition periods are way higher risk than where we're at now. So I'm massively conservative with a small c when it comes to like finance, investments. I'm always the safest pair of houses, and I would definitely put Nintendo in that category at the moment. Like I think you are very likely to see like steady, positive growth, but I think it's very low risk, and I would argue that investing in companies when they're transitioning like a new console, I wouldn't invest in Sony or Xbox right now. Like, they are in a really sticky place.
Definitely not,
because they have not done the transition of getting to their next console, and they don't know how to get to that point. So they're either going to elongate their existing console life cycle, which has loads of negative consequences, although we think they're not actually that bad, because the investors want the next thing, but they don't know how to get to the next thing because RAM is so expensive and all these other things about parts. So yeah, it's a messy situation for them, and Nintendo, I think, are in a way better position by like almost like a tenfold amount. Like, I think that they are doing much better, even with a dodgy Mario Kart game that came out last year. But I think other than that, they've done well.
And I think they're in an even better position because games like Onimusha and Pragmata and Final Fantasy VII are now coming to Switch 2 when they weren't able to before. Like, they are getting modern AAA games on day one on the Switch 2. And if people are like, well, I want to play those games, but also, do I spend 1,200 on a PS6 or do I spend 500 on a Switch 2? One is a lot more accessible and easier, and it might look a little bit worse, but let's be fucking honest. Like, Roblox is the biggest game in the world, and it looks like shit. People don't care anymore about what games look like, right? Like, it doesn't... Minecraft is one of the biggest successes of all time. Like, there are so many games that do not look at the highest fidelity that are mega successes. It's not that important, and people, especially younger generations, they don't give a fuck. They don't care if James Bond's fucking nose hair is visible, you know? Like, it doesn't matter. Is the game fun or not, right? That's what they care about. So I think Nintendo obviously lives in a much safer position from that perspective of like, okay, well, you know, Diana's hair tech is better on the PS5, but like, it still runs fine on the Switch 2 and is a fun video game, right? So, yeah, I think that's kind of like another benefit to them when it comes to decisions that people are making of like, what console should I be buying and where I should be investing my money and all this sort of stuff, right? So, yeah, it's tricky. I do think that, like, if you are PlayStation right now, obviously there's bad stuff happening with the physical games stuff, and I do think that investors don't tend to pay attention to things like the backlash that is happening over that. I think it's the type of like long-term brand damage that you do that if you're a shareholder or an investor, you probably have no idea that that's happening, right? And you're just looking at it at the bottom line of like, well, Sony is saying they're going to make way more money with physical games not being in the picture anymore. That means I'm going to make way more money. And the truth is, in the background, they are chipping away at their brand identity and loyalty to the point where, in the long term, Sony are probably going to suffer quite badly as a result of this, right? And they're going to have negative consequences come, but that'll be far down the line when, I don't know, when people don't realize that it happened. By the time it happens, it will have already happened, right?
Yeah.
And
they've already shut down the factories that make the discs.
Nintendo, I don't know, have that problem as viscerally. Like, they definitely have their issues. They have things that people are not happy with. But I would argue that, generally speaking, they understand what their audience wants, and they are not they're not being stupid about a lot of things, I would say, in terms of, the same way that Sony are with the physical stuff.
They're really cautious and slow on a lot of stuff like that. Like they
take a wait and see attitude to see, here's a new technology.
Yes.
Let's just wait and see what other people do with it before we go all in and try doing anything with it, or a new genre or whatever. Like they're always gonna be a little bit cautious about that stuff and be safe.
And the downside of that is it took them an extremely long time to get better at like online multiplayer games, full stop. Like it's just taken Nintendo a very long time. I think they're in a good place now for the most part, maybe minus Dustblood.
But I was going to say the Dustblood situation, which is kind of like a double header of people who don't know how to do technical stuff, because FromSoft are really bad at tech when it comes to, like, Elden Ring to this day. When I'm playing it on PC, sometimes it will just freeze for 5 seconds and then it will start working again, and I'm like, guys, what are we doing? It's it's capped at 60 FPS on PC as well. I can't go higher than 60, which is a ridiculous thing. But like From Software and Nintendo together, that's always going to be a recipe for some kind of thing happening.
The bright side of how slow and conservative Nintendo will definitely mean that I'm very confident they will have physical games in 10 years' time. Like I'm fairly confident of that. I think they will be the last company standing with physical media, maybe across all forms of like media entertainment. But totally. I think they're going to be slow on that stuff because it just works for them.
I've said it. I feel like I've said it for the entire life cycle of this podcast. Nintendo will be the last console manufacturer standing. I stand by that fucking fact. They are too fucking stubborn. They are not going to go and put stuff elsewhere. They're going to figure it out. They're going to make sure that their console exists even when everyone else falls apart. It's going to be because they see themselves as their own thing, right? They never see themselves as competing with these other people. They always look at themselves as a separate entity, and doing their own thing, off in their own little corner. So yeah, I think that's pretty guaranteed. I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things with games of like, should I do some shares and stuff and game stuff, because I feel like I understand the market quite well and what's going to happen. But it's always, the thing is, no one can predict anything that's going to happen in 5 years, let alone the next year, so you never really know what it's going to be.
Maybe wait until Trump's not president and things might be marginally more predictable, because it's just, I think that's what scares me the most about investments, is just kind of the Ukraine war situation in Iran. There's just so many, like, presidents raising tariffs. Like, there's so many variables that are completely out of your control, and it is literally just roulette. And, Nintendo have weathered these storms better than their competition as things stand. But, like, as confident as I was in their investments for, like, in the next 5 years, you still can't bet on what external factors will happen and where does this AI situation lead to. Well, what's the next step? Who knows?
It's the whole thing. And then what if fucking Saudi Arabia buys some more shares in Nintendo and then owns most of it? That's when you're like, well, fuck, man, it's all over, isn't it? So
Saudi Arabia's investments are actually slowing down, interestingly.
Well, I mean, they did buy EA, so that was pretty big.
Yes,
but
they
aside from that,
but they're winding it down in terms of sport. But it's interesting.
Yeah, stuff like that, right? There's so many like outside things that you have no idea what's going to shift the balance and kind of change everything. Look, all I know is as long as Xenoblade Genesis comes out, I'll be happy. All right, that'll put up their share price. That'll be great. So, yeah, we'll see. Cool. I think that is going to do us. Bally, where can people send these emails if they would so like to do so as a second reminder?
Please email ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com.
Fantastic. I think we should get out of here, so let's go do those plugs and get out of here. We have a thing, it's called Patreon, patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife. You can go there, you can support us. We have a few new supporters, Bally, in the last few shows. I guess there hasn't been an opportunity, or were these all like within the time of the last one? I don't know.
These are like last month. I don't think I rounded them up last time, but thank you to shout outs to new patrons. They are Del C, JB, Red Raven, and Ed E. Thank you very much for your support, and also thank you to our $10 tier plus patrons. They are, of course, Sullivan C, Zach S, Thomas, Matthew, Albert, Wicked Gamer UK Alan, Orange Thunder, Nintendo Man, Turtle, and Dancer. Thank you for your support, but thank you also to all of our other patrons for all the support you give the show. And yeah, we put out a show last week. That was fun. Talked about a few things.
Fantastic. You can obviously find the show in various places. We are on Spotify, we're on Stitcher. You can download us to any podcasting app that you so have and would like, and we'll go into your podcasting feeds every couple of weeks' time, which is great. So do that. You can also find us on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel linked in the description, as well as our Discord, where you can join some other fine folks discussing the show, which is a good fun time. You can find us on the internet. I'm at NBZ on Blue Sky. Where are you, Bally?
I'm on Blue Sky at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN 91.
Excellent. And you can, of course, find the podcast on there as well at TNL Podcast, where you can go for updates about the show and what we're doing in case things are late, delayed, or any other things that we have to tell you about what is going on. I think that is everything. So thank you, everybody, for listening. We are going to be back in a couple of weeks. I'll be back from Germany, and then hopefully won't be flying anywhere for a bit longer. And I feel like we're still kind of like waiting for. I guess
there's orbitals.
Next time there's orbitals coming out, isn't there?
We might have played one or two sessions of orbitals before next show, but we'll see.
Correct. There's lots of games coming in September. It's going to be a bit of an onslaught, I think, for the wider industry. I think for us it wouldn't be crazy, but there's definitely.
I'm picking one game, and I think you're picking one. I think your game is Fire Emblem, and mine's probably Wolverine. And
yes,
you might get to Wolverine. We'll see, but yeah,
I'll get to Wolverine later, I think. But I'm definitely prioritizing Fire Emblem as
We're not that interested in other September stuff, are we?
I mean, Trails in the Sky second chapter is coming out the same day as Fire Emblem,
How
which
could
I would
have
argue
forgotten?
is.
How could I?
I think that's a really bad decision from them, because that's the same audience. It's like the same people who are playing those games.
The weeb overlap is strong with this.
Yeah, very strong.
Yeah,
so they've messed up. But I still have to finish the original Trails second chapter. So I don't know what to do, Bally. Should I just do that, continue, or should I stop and just play that instead?
You need a video game playing plan, but like I enjoy doing all the time. I'm going to do my bonus bits about that when you're in Germany, so everyone look out for that. I'm going to talk about what I'm playing between now and the end of the year.
Great. I still have loads of things to get to as well, so but it'll be jam packed, it'll be good. We'll have a lot of things to talk about.
We've got to play some season 4 of Overwatch together, MBZ. Like, come on.
Oh yeah, of course, my favourite thing.
When did you get so negative on Overwatch?
No, a competitive Overwatch. We discussed this. If you want to hear,
we can do more quick play. We don't have to do that much competitive.
Yeah. If you want to hear some spicy debate about competitive Overwatch and how Bally psychoanalyzes me as someone who doesn't like competitive games, then
unless you're playing me at Smash Brothers or playing competitive Pokemon, but
exactly. Go listen to the Patreon episode on that. That was good fun. Sweet. Well, that's going to do us. Thank you all so very much for listening. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with some more podcasting Nintendo video games. Until then, a goodbye. The musical interlude used on today's show was From Now On, Battle 2, from Deltarune. Copyright Toby Fox 2026.